This video was sponsored by Wayfinder. Over the years, many game developers realized that on top of having a good game, it is beneficial to also give a good story to that game. Especially when stories can kickstart entire new communities. And the developers over at Airship Syndicate absolutely have experience with that. Be it by crafting a new universe in Battle Chasers, releasing one of the best story games for Riot Forge, that being Ruined King, or be it through their latest game, Wayfinder. Wayfinder is a multiplayer online action RPG. It is a game where you explore open world areas, but also delve into tile-based randomized dungeons. Since it is based in a fantasy universe with elements of sci-fi, one would expect an ordinary story to give this game some background. In RPGs, this would be typically done through simple dialogue. But Wayfinder is trying to be much more than that by putting their lore absolutely everywhere. From classic conversations to items to how gameplay works. Yes, absolutely every aspect of Wayfinder down to character progression is rooted in lore, which gives the story of this game a very unique feeling. And that's something I want to show you. So today, we're going to talk about the base lore of Wayfinder, and we'll explain its universe so you don't miss out on any of the details when you pick up this game. Just be aware that there will be some tiny spoilers from the first 10 minutes of the game. But it's all just the introduction information, so just to be safe, I wanted to mention it. So rest assured, it's totally fine, and if anything, giving you more context will make the experience better for you. The world of Wayfinder is handled in a really cool way, because the very foundation of this world is rooted in lore, that being the gloom. The gloom is the ever-present threat that is coming at you from all sides. You may be exploring the wilderness, the deep underground caves, or ancient ruins, and you'll find the gloom lurking just behind the corner. On the gameplay side, the gloom is what sets up the dungeons. You'll walk into a dungeon entrance, use your gloom dagger to channel elements into the gloom, which changes it and alters what's inside the dungeon. It's a really cool mechanic that lets you craft your own dungeon where you can hunt down the specific enemies you are looking for. What I didn't expect, however, is that Airship Syndicate had all of this planned way ahead. And the story behind why all of this is the way it is what makes this universe so interesting. So first, I'll show you the basics of Wayfinder's lore, and then I'll show you how cleverly it is woven into the gameplay. The story of Wayfinder begins after a cataclysm known as the Fall. For many years, mortals lived in a wonderful world that fused magic and technology. So besides your classic humans or the more exotic Eldren, you also had hybrid synthetic machines walking around. Of course, you also had the goblins, the bandits, also known as shrikes, perhaps some ancient constructs, and even the demi-humans. Or in other words, humans with bestial blood, who did have some minor conflicts with other humans in the past. But despite that, it was a golden age that allowed mortals to wield the elements around them. And yet, even during these golden times, nobody was safe from the darkness. And eventually it was revealed that the entire time, the Eldren had a plan of their own. It was believed that the godly beings known as the Celestial Architects shaped this world from primordial chaos. And over time, with most evidence pointing at the last decade before the game happens, this chaos mutated into the dark realm known as the Gloom. And as it turns out, it was these purple-skinned horned people known as the Eldren who found a way how to weaponize the gloom. It is still unclear whether the Eldren are trying to control the gloom for power or if the gloom is corrupting their minds. Or if a little bit of both is happening. But it's clear that the Eldren were aligned with the gloom. And so it was in their interest to spread it around. But what stood in their way were the beacons. Up until that point, all the big cities were built around them. It was always believed that these beacons were built by the Celestial Architects, though not everyone agreed on it. But still, these giant indestructible structures served as a symbol of civilization. And because these ancient beacons shone with unique celestial light, which also proved to be a source of unique magic, sometimes you may hear characters referring to it as the light of the architects. But then, a new unfortunate chain of events rose to the horizon. The beacons were being extinguished, and the cities around them were being consumed by darkness. And soon they all found out it was the Eldren who were dimming the light, so that the darkness could spread. Fortunately though, the mortal races were not defenseless. There was a group of heroes known as the Seekers, who were based in the city of Skylight. At the first sign of danger, the Seekers rose to defend their people. And so, just like everyone else, they witnessed the gloom in action for the first time. In fact, this is the scene you can witness at the beginning of the game. Here the heroes get inside the beacon and they attempted to light it up again. They succeeded, but all of the Seekers were defeated. Only the one known as Omen survived. And this is where a bit of a twist happens. Because all the Seekers died inside the gloom, they didn't truly die. Their essence was just lost inside the realm. So with enough patience, Omen would be able to find that essence and summon you back. And eventually, that is exactly what she did. A whole year after those events, she brought you back. Which is not only the moment you get to pick up the game for the first time, but it is also the moment the Seekers were resurrected and they were reformed as Wayfinders. Now, you see, what I just described is not just a random story from this universe. It is the very foundation of everything. For example, at the beginning of the game, you pick a character, and then you get the option to collect resources and summon other characters. Kinda how you get more champions in something like League of Legends. But here, even this mechanic has a story, because you are summoning other lost Seekers, now Wayfinders, from the gloom into the physical realm. But there is a lot more of this. The aforementioned Skylight, led by the warrior known as the Wolf, is the main city hub of the game. So you'll see what happens to the city and its survivors after it just fought the gloom. But very early in the game, you will also use the Myriad Stone to craft yourself a Gloom Dagger, a relic that forms a direct link with the darkness. As I mentioned, one of the main game mechanics is crafting your own dungeons. From the story's perspective, this is really cool because you are doing it by cutting a window into the gloom and altering its realm with elemental stones. Because you see, while the gloom is a chaotic realm beyond mortal comprehension, the Wayfinders learned it is changing shape based on what part of the world it consumed. Meaning that every time the gloom struck a piece of the world, it consumed the environment and mutated it inside the realm. So when you are crafting your own dungeon, you are not just looking into the gloom to see where you can go. You are actually reshaping the gloom using the landscape it consumed, as well as adding additional info on top of it, that being the elemental stones. This is honestly a really cool aspect of Wayfinder's lore that gets explored a lot in the story. But that is definitely not where the links to gameplay stop. Because next we also have to talk about the echoes. In Wayfinder, echoes are an item that drops from literally anything you kill. And depending on what you kill, the echoes will have different stats. So echoes from bandits and hunters give you crit stats, and echoes from the more monstrous types tend to give you defensive stats. Also, from basic mobs it can be just stats, but from bosses it can be entire new abilities. And as you can see, you slot these echoes into the weapons and into the Wayfinder. And that's for a very simple reason. Remember, the Wayfinders died inside the gloom. So when Omen brought them back, it was after the gloom reshaped their bodies. And since their bodies are shaped from chaos itself, they also have the ability to fuse these echoes, which are tied to the gloom, with their bodies. I hope you're keeping up, because things will get even cooler. Of course, at first, your body would not be able to handle too much gloom. So at first, you would have to slowly start getting used to it before you can really get pumped up. And again, this reflects on the gameplay. At lower levels, you have a cap as to how many echoes you can actually shove into your body. But with experience, as you level up, you will get used to them. You will learn how to handle more of the gloom, and so the cap gets higher. And after that, the Wayfinders even learn how to fuse these echoes with their weapons. I understand that what I just described might sound confusing, but you'll see that the story comes to you naturally pretty well. Although very early on, you'll get introduced to Lord Halar, who I have to admit does like to talk a lot, but he is absolutely gonna be your main guy when it comes to the lore. So try to pay attention when he comes up on screen. But to be honest, there is a lot of other characters who also chip in with some lore every now and then. But that's really all you need to know about the lore of Wayfinder. It is a great merging of gameplay and lore. In most RPGs and action games, a lot of people tend to skip any kind of story that will slow them down. But here, even if you decide to do so, the story will come to you naturally, which is something a lot of people will appreciate. But also, because the main player hub acts as a big story centerpiece, it seems like the lore is set up to evolve with the players sitting in the front seats. So when you look into the distance, you may see an interesting landmark now. But in the future, who knows how the story will shape the world.